could it be the most hotly anticipated season of strategy gaming in a long time? Maybe. Let's take a look at some of the big releases coming in 2024 and through 2025 for strategy and simulation games. Anno, History Untold, scheduled for release September 24. This game is undoubtedly a civilization competitor. Here's looking at you, Civ 7, but also trying to do something a bit different, leaning more into grand strategy. They call it an evolution of historical grand strategy. Of course, it's about building a civilization through historical periods, but it does do things differently. Historical leaders feature here, as you can see, but the actual game itself, the simulation, seems to be much deeper, tracking statistics, simulating individual people as you build up much more nuanced and detailed cities. It's already had a couple of closed alphas, as well as the team behind it regularly sharing this kind of, for whatever reason, sort of cropped gameplay footage. Is it because they want to show off their logos? Is it that the game doesn't quite look good enough to stretch it out? Or is it just simply a design choice? I don't know. But within these videos, they've showcased more of the city building, the kind of regional gameplay, how buildings and economic activity is connected. Some of the other key selling points or points of difference for this game are what they call the national crafting economy, as well as somewhat controversially, truly simultaneous turns, a non-linear tech tree, and multiplayer, synchronous and async. I'm of course more interested in the single player, and given that this game is coming out very soon, you should probably expect to see a little bit more of it on my channel. Again, scheduled for release in September of 2024 and coming of course to Game Pass. Next up, it's Prison Architect 2, with a familiar theme, a familiar month, September 2024. We'll see it again a few more times in this video. Prison Architect 2 is of course the successor to the first game, a management strategy game about building a prison. A simulation game, of course, deep into not just building it, designing it, but then also running it, the policy, the decisions. How do you manage both the finances of the prison, as well as the bureaucracy and those misbehaving prisoners? As you can imagine, the big change that you can not just imagine, but also visualize with your eyeballs, is the fact that the game is now rendered in 3D. A big step change, of course, from the previous version. It's been delayed, I think, a few times already, somewhat slow to get out of the gates, but all going well, we'll have it in our grubby little hands very soon. Speaking of soon, coming soon is Whiskerwood. This bad boy just announced, I believe last week, at the time of recording this video, published by the, dare I say, legendary publisher Hooded Horse. This strategy simulation game reminds me a lot of Timberborn, but goodbye beavers and hello whiskers. The design sort of philosophy behind it is that there are some oppressive overlords, cats, and you must not only develop a functioning city, a functioning economy, assign jobs to your little rodent people, but also try and get out from underneath that oppressive rule. There's that kind of against the storm element, if you will, bleeding in there as well, with that sort of race against the clock, the challenges that you must meet. It also, looking at the trailer, reminds me, this element, just slightly of Tropico as well, where you have those sort of vying Cold War powers competing for your interest. But in this case, it's just your cat overlords. Of course, all of the other things you would expect from a truly good strategy game feature here as well, like research, upgrades, assigning workers to tasks, and trying to get the best out of the resources that you can harvest. I'm looking forward to seeing how this one plays out. And would it be this video without Civilization 7? How could I not include it? Of course, the kingpin of historical 4X strategy games, in my humble opinion, Sid Meier's returns with Civ 7. Scheduled for release very vaguely and still very openly, sometime in 2025. Civ 7 is actually going to find its way to our screens a little bit before that. The team have, and I quote, promised a full reveal of Sid Meier's Civilization 7 and its exciting new features and innovations in August 2024. I assume we're expecting some gameplay. A sort of fairly long, but not over the top, maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 12-minute breakdown of the game, fairly slowly, showing off the new features like they did with Civilization 6 years and years ago now. Civilization 7 will, of course, be a heavy feature on my channel. It's what started it all, Sid Meier's franchise, so I'm very excited to return to covering it. If you'd like to see that, do subscribe, because in a month's time from now, we'll be able to break that gameplay down. Next up, it's Frostpunk 2. Back in that wonderful month of September 2024, another big release scheduled. This time, a somewhat darker survival post-apocalyptic city builder. Of course, the successor to Frostpunk 1, which you can, by the way, pick up on Steam very cheaply and easily. If you're interested in this franchise, you're thinking, I kind of want to dip my toes in, very easy to do. Likewise with Civ 6, but back to Frostpunk 2. The game is set 30 years after an apocalyptic blizzard completely destroyed Earth, completely ravaged it. And in Frostpunk 2, you'll have to face not just building the city, managing its resources, but also the deep political tensions that exist within the game, both in kind of an events-based system, as well as more broadly passing laws, developing policy to govern the city. The hardcore survival element should not be overlooked. The beta for this one was pretty fun. Looking forward to the full game in September. Next up, a game that has actually already released. My bad, I got sick while I was making this video and had to delay it a little bit. It's Cataclismo, again published by Hooded Horse. This one developed by Digital Sun. The game released toward the end of July 2024. It's very unique. Like, honestly, it just is. I was playing an early preview version of it before it came out. The version that came out and now has extra modes like the sandbox mode that you're watching the trailer for here. It's a strategy simulation game that's a base builder, city builder. The design is beautiful, the world design. The building is very fun and largely free of kind of clumsy placings, although occasionally stuff gets a bit stuck. You can import, design, save blueprints to easily build fortifications in future, train up some troops, post them in and around, and then defend against waves of enemies. You can also control your units, march around the world, explore, find loot in other game modes. There's much more of a focus on that kind of real-time strategy, moving around, controlling your units. Or lean in towards a mode like this, where it's all about base building and defense. A super fun game, gather your resources, build your defenses. Honestly, very unique. So I thought, even though it's already come out, technically not upcoming, I wanted to include it here. Now we're going to move through, before I go to my big last recommendations, to some rapid fire games. The special thing about these ones is we don't really have footage. They've just kind of been announced. But they are all, I promise you, or at least I hope, fairly important. The first one is this new Anno game, 117. Following on from the 116th release in the franchise, Anno 117 promises to place us as a Roman governor. In all seriousness, of course, it's about the year 117 AD. We should expect it to be much like previous Anno games, hopefully similar to Anno 1800, and not that futury one, but nonetheless, up until now, at the time of recording the video, all that we've seen is trailers of a sort of a grey-haired dude shouting at a field. There's been one or two of these, not really much to see, so we're going to move through into a game that technically has no name, simply referred to still publicly, at least by Paradox Interactive, the publisher, as, well, Project Caesar. You only have to look on Reddit or anywhere on YouTube to find that this game is being heralded as Europa Universalis 5. And it looks like it could be a goodie. Full disclosure, I have basically no experience with the EU franchise. Despite it being arguably and seemingly right up my alley, it's the right genre, it's got some cool stuff, it's set in a very interesting historical period. So far, Project Caesar has shown off a lot about the game, the map, the economy, with roughly weekly teasers, developer diaries coming out, showcasing all sorts of good stuff. And the final rapid-fire suggestion here is the Star Wars strategy game that we know basically nothing about, except it's being developed by XCOM veterans who have worked on both XCOM and Civ. It's a tactics strategy game. Speaking of tactics, let's talk about Broken Arrow. Up for release in the, well, sometime in the remainder of 2024, this strategy game is promising large-scale real-time modern warfare. Unlike most of the other entries on this list, actually, now that I think about it. So, let's make sure we cover it properly. A real-time strategy game promising around 300 different units. Units both on the ground, recon units, infantry, vehicles, right the way up into the skies, helicopters and airplanes. Now, a lot of the footage that's come out for it has showcased, kind of in-game cinematics rather than gameplay footage. The cinematics look great. You may have already played this because, like a lot of other entries on this list, it has been playable, right? Some of the things have had betas, other things have featured in festivals like Steam Next Fest, where we could play it for free. So keep it in the back of your mind that a lot of these games have already been played, they're fairly palatable, we kind of know what to expect, despite the use of trailer footage. However, if you wanted some real footage, this footage, very old, showcases a little bit more of a realistic view of Broken Arrow's gameplay footage. I'm interested to see how they pull off the scale factor in particular. Speaking of scale, and moving more towards a grand strategy scale, Kaiserpunk is also coming with a slightly more refined Q3 2024 release date. Promising to be the ultimate city builder and grand strategy combo, it's attempting to do quite a lot of large-scale things. I mean, take a look at that view, for example, the battle view. A large view of Europe, of your units, where they're stationed, where you'd like to move them, and what you'd like to order them. Jump into the detail, and here they are. Moving through to things like the economy and economic simulation, this is also obviously the other key element where grand strategy will come in, right? It's about having lots of resources, lots of control, supply chains, and logistical issues, potentially. Backed up by over 100 resources to mine and farm, if they can pull off the grand strategy, come city builder combat game, this game will be wicked. And finally, a recommendation you might not have expected and maybe don't even want, Orcs Must Die Deathtrap. I know what you're thinking, how did we go from historical, learned grand strategy to running around like some knockoff Shrek building a base? But I actually really like this franchise. Stepping a little bit further away from the base building in Cataclismo, here it's of course an action third-person shooter, but crucially a tower defense game. Unlock the cool stuff, place it down through the pathways where the bad guys move, and destroy them. Speaking of being destroyed, I'll allow you to destroy me in the comments for my bad recommendations now, and also thank you very much for watching. In seriousness, I think there's loads of good stuff. Obviously things like you're seeing now with Art History Untold, Civilization 7, I mean, it's going to be an exciting 12-ish months ahead. Thank you for joining me, I'll see you next time.